Hello, my name is Jim Sim, President of the Midwest Pipe Band Association, and welcome to the first in our series of interviews with pipe band personalities regarding pipe bands, piping, and drumming. Today, our guest is Pipe Major Ken Eller of St. Catharines, Ontario, and Ken is a longtime player, adjudicator, pipe band personality extravagance. So Ken, thanks for doing this with us.
Well, many thanks, Doug.
I was going to say, can you give us a little background of your background, just for those that might not know?
Well, it goes back a long way, Jim, back into the 60s and 70s when I first joined pipe bands at the grade 2 level, the Clan McFarland Pipe Band, and we went to grade 1 by 1966 and traveled to Scotland. We were one of the first bands going to Scotland. I took over the band in 1971 and lasted as pipe major until 1988. And during that time, we won many North American championships and were very successful. In 1984-85, I had the opportunity to set my exams for the judging panel for the Ontario Pipers and Pipe Band Association and also the Eastern U.S. Pipe Band Association. So I've been a judge there for, we're looking now, in excess of 30 years. In the early 90s, I joined the 78th Fraser Highlanders, who had won the World's Championship in 1987, and I stayed with them for 10 full years. After retiring and taking a 2-year compulsory hiatus, I was invited to go on the judging panel of the RSPBA in Scotland, and that was in 2004, and I've been a member of that panel judging majors over there, the World's Pipe Band Championships, every year since, until this year, of course, with the break. But so it's been a lengthy career. Piping wise, I started playing in the mid 50s. So that sort of dates me and gives you my age, you know, but it's been a wonderful walk through the park, so to speak. And so now judging and teaching full time allows me to basically devote my attention to people who can prosper from years of experience. And after all, I think it's not what you learn in any one day, it's the experience that you accumulate through the years. And hopefully that'll come through in this session. So once again, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ken. So for today's topic, we're going to discuss what an adjudicator looks for in a pipe band performance. And we're lucky to have Ken because he is both a fully accredited piping adjudicator as well as an ensemble adjudicator, and we will discuss both aspects. We'll start off today with the piping aspect, if that's okay, Ken. And I think what we'll do maybe is start off with a band performance, right from the opening rolls at the line into the circle, and maybe you can kind of take it from there. What you look for, maybe some of the things that a pipe major might not think of that you're looking for, and kind of take us where you're at, where your head is at as an adjudicator when a band comes to the line and goes into the circle.
That's great, Jim. You know, to start things off, as a former pipe major and also as an adjudicator, I always considered our performance having 3 major components. This was the introduction, the main body itself, and then the finish. And that's consistent with the old style of judging where they awarded points for introduction, they awarded points for your musical performance and so on. First of all, to the introduction, obviously, and it's the one that all the audiences hear, is the precision of the initial E coming in. And that's an easy one to pick up on. If somebody's early, obviously their chanter sounds. Somebody strikes the drones, obviously, if it's early, they are audible as well. I stand in a position so that I can visually see every member of the pipe section pretty well. So I have a visual connect with them. And even though visual isn't perhaps part of the adjudication, if somebody doesn't get struck up on the other side of the circle, I can see it and I'm alerted to it. And so I know that there's a fault in the precision. The other thing is the tonal aspects of it, obviously. You hear an awful lot of shy blowing at the start or lack of pressure and flatness coming in. So we're certainly looking for a good, strong, in-tune chanter on that first note. One of the things with the drum section, after the pipe major is given the command, that's the tempo that's set for the introductory tune. And the drum section are expected to time their rolls and pulse their rolls in concert with that command. And so many times that is the case, but during the first part of the tune, you'll find that the pipe section will drop the tempo. It falls down into a slower tempo, and it's not noticeable when you're in the band playing, but you can hear it from outside. So we look for tempo consistency from start to finish, and that is one that pipe majors, I think, should really practice a little more earnestly during the off season. And we used to practice with the band constant attacks and tempo, and making sure that whatever the rolls were at the time, we matched it in the pipe section. And then the obvious thing as well is unison. Not so often picked up by players again within the pipe section, but we hear unison errors. Do they get started through the introductory bars of the tune, pick up notes and stuff like that? So this is applicable to all grades, whether it be grade 5 right through to grade 1. The principle of the introduction is fundamentally the same. But let me walk you through the different types of contests that we have, and perhaps how our adjudication methods might be different given the different grades. And I'll start off with the quick march medley. Grade 5, grade 4 bands as such. After the introduction, we're certainly looking for unison, how well they're playing together. This is going into the main body now. We're looking for tempos. Are their tempos consistent going from one tune to another? And fundamentally, we're looking for the tuning, the sound of the pipe section. Is it consistent all the way around the circle? Are there blowing issues that we might be able to pick up on? And this leads us right through to the clarity of technique as a result of the sound. A poor sound would deliver a fuzzy, if you want to call it that, technique. We're not hearing things like doublings and torluas and how well the pipers have been instructed to play the fundamental rhythms of our music. And another thing in the quick march medley that seems to fall in, it might be more in the role of the ensemble judge, but it's the composition itself. If I were determining winners, so we say the top 6 placers in a quick march medley, I probably, if there were several equal performances, I might look at the types of tunes that they played. Were they 4/4s, 3/4s, or 2/4s coming on right now? And the better grade 4 and 5 bands are playing small 2/4 marches. The rhythms of a 2/4 being a little more challenging than that of a 4/4 or 3/4. So it indicates with a good play, a better quality of music. So that's sort of an opinion, shall we say, but I've seen it happen in Scotland as recently as about 3-4 years ago with the College of Piping pipe band from Prince Edward Island. They went in with a fabulous quick march medley, all 2/4s, big 2/4s, 2 parts each, and they rose to become world champions with that. And so if you want to take your band up the grades in grade 5 and 4, start to introduce the quality of music. Different time signatures might help. And of course, when we get to the finish of a quick march medley, always looking for precision. Are they stopping in time? Tonal drops is a big thing. People cutting out, so the volume drops, they cut out early, or pitch issues where being afraid they're not going to get their pipes down in time, they start to maybe too early, getting the pressure in the bag down and the pitch drops, so you hear the tone dropping off, inconsistencies in it. And that's especially true in tunes that finish on D. Finishing on A is a little stronger, it seems, but no, if they're playing a tune in D at the end, you can certainly hear these pitch drops. And then trailing drones, one of the obvious things as well. So there's a lot of fundamental things in a quick march medley, from unison to tempo to sound, the clarity of technique, and certainly the composition and the precision with which they finish the medley off. if we go to the higher grades that play
Hey,
march,
can I ask you
sustain,
one
and reel.
question there? Can I ask you one question, Ken?
Yeah,
You
please
brought up a
do.
little bit
Yeah,
about tempos. Many
yeah,
times we've both heard where a grade 5 band will play 3 or 4 different tunes in their march medley, and they'll change a tempo from one tune to another. Do you look for a consistency in tempo across all the tunes, or how would you treat that if they lowered the tempo for one tune and brought it back up for another?
you know, that's always a decision we have to make. And I'll tell you an example where it comes. They open with a 4/4 march and go into a 2/4 march. And you see it right there. The higher complexities of the rhythms in the 2/4 causes them to slow down. And I would note that on the sheet. Now, I would not let it detract too much from an overall good performance. But if it had been a lower rated performance, I might very well have said, okay, listen, you might want to consider taking that 2/4 out just for tempo consistency. I think in the intent by most associations is that there should be tempo consistency. If you think about the quick march medley, I might be mistaken, but wasn't it designed to bring street playing bands, parade bands, into the competitive area? And in which case these would be tunes submitted as if they were marching down the street. In other words, tempo consistency would be the most important thing.
Okay.
So very well, if I had a winning performance, I would not experience this too much. Okay, a good band will be able to sustain the tempos, but caution to all the pipe majors. You can't play a 4/4 slow just to encourage better playing of the 2/4. So, and the same thing is changes of rhythms. How about going from a simple time composition to say a 6/8 march? You get different rhythmic patterns, and their transitions become very, very important, a thing which I didn't mention in the main body. So you've got two things, the consistency of tempo and the transition between time signatures. Keeping it all simple is one thing, but when you go into compound rhythms, you have another degree of difficulty. And I'd have to take it under advisement. And when I say that, advisement amongst myself only type of thing. How did it affect the overall performance? So it would be a matter of opinion. I would be looking for tempo consistency though, all the way through. Okay?
Great. Okay, thank you.
Now, moving on to the MSR, we've got all the things that we talked about in the quick march medley, but now we've got some other issues that come up. First of all, the march 2/4, 4-parted as a rule. Some cases it's a 2-parted composition. We go into a suspect, so we've got a transition of both rhythm and tempo. And we've got suspect into a reel. We've got another transition of rhythm and tempo. So those transitions become really important. So the unison on those transitions is going to be really an important factor in determining the cohesiveness of the performance. The tempos are, I have set in my mind certain tempos, and it's not the grade 1 tempos of 80 beats per minute for the marches and what have you. It might be as low as 72 or 70 for a grade 3 band, and those tempos might go up as the grade level goes up. But they've got to have a musical tempo, in my opinion. And then the other thing that we bring into it, which really we didn't discuss too much in the quick march medley because that was mostly technical, would be the musical interpretation of their 3 tunes. I didn't mention that in the quick march medley. They're just playing marches, and the musical interpretation is, I think, a less of a concern for bands growing up from the grade 5 to 4 and so on. But when we get to grade 3 and 2 and 1, musical interpretation is so important. 2-bar phrasing in marches, for example. And when we talk about ensemble, we'll have a field day with that one. You know, and suspects. How about the pulsing? How about first beat pulsing or third beat pulsing and so on? Or are they just rambling through in a 4/4 style without any extra pulsing going on within the body of the tune? That's a concern in the suspects. And reels. How about flow? How about tempo? And I have sort of imaginary tempos And I've often made these statements. If the tunes are too slow and cautious, I'll say that. In other words, I use the word that you've got to grab me. I'll use that in medleys as well. And tempo is part of that scenario where the bands have to be confident in their playing. If the tunes are too slow, they're playing cautiously, and especially when you get to spades and reels, they're not dance tunes anymore. And let's face it, we want our foot going along with them. So the best bands will have a spirited tempo, but it will be controlled, and the unison will be very, very good throughout the whole thing. When we move to medleys, some other things come into the scenario, and I agree with a number of my fellow judges. The medleys that turn you on or grab you are the ones that are going to get your full attention. That means that the introduction becomes very, very important. You set a great standard by your introductory tune. And to give you an example of bands at the grade 2 and grade 1 level, there's been a variety of hornpipes that have used to get bands into their circles and so on, and that was legit. I think it was a spirit. They're all spirited tunes. They're great drumming tunes. They're rhythmic, and it gets you on a upbeat going into your circle. Of late, some other bands have used some other types of tunes, 2/4 marches and 3/4 marches. I can think of a couple of bands in Scotland did that, and it was refreshing to hear that. So how they grab you at the beginning, and you would have this experience going back to the old, I say the olden days. It's not really. It's only in the 80s and so on with Strathclyde Police. They played some marvelous 2/4 marches into the medleys, and with their drum section under Alec Connell and Johnny Kirkwood, fabulous rhythmic tunes that grabs you from the beginning. So there's lots of variety on that opening tune. If they lose me through some just rhythmic, non-musical passage, that's a shame early up. So then from there, we get into the main body, and the composition takes over. Do they have key changes in their tunes? Time signature changes and transitions become important. When I look at the finish going on, again, judging the medley, a lot of bands have very good rhythmic tunes that finish on an upbeat and keep me interested to the end. Other bands get into a long, prolonged, I'll give you the notes in particular, tunes that are in B and G, and they just are repetitive or redundant rhythmic tunes, but they lose the melodic flow of the medley. Then I've got an issue with that. And that will certainly detract from the performance. It doesn't leave me with a very good feeling. So the medley construction is so important, and what they do with it. And of course, as the grades go up, you're a little more severe in your criticisms. And any stray from the norm in grade 1 would be a major event. You allow a lot of that in the grade 3. In other words, you almost expect it a little bit as you go down the grades. And so your comments would be more instructional than they would be critical, okay? And having said that, every score sheet or crit sheet that we do write should have some positive components to it that are encouraging for all grades. And if you hear something that's good, I'm not averse to putting it down. Something that really cranks your crank type of thing. The pipe majors and the lead drummers should hear that so that they can explore those possibilities going in the future. Mind you, every judge has a different opinion. And this is where I stand on the sides of the judges. A lot of this is opinion as you go through. The technical stuff, errors and bad tone or good tone or what have you, is a matter of fact. But when it gets into the musical performance, it's one judge against the other in that sense. And so you do get variety in placings, okay, because of that. One judge would like it, another judge might not like it. So I think the competitor has to accept that. As far as that's concerned, with the basics, the intro, the main body, and the finish, we still have the same principles for all grades. Okay, so summary, sound is important, clarity of technique is important, tempos are important, and unison. And if all bands follow that in their practice, I think they'll do well in the competitions.
And how would you, or maybe you don't, but do you put any more weight on, say, tone or sound over perfect execution or tempos? Is there anything that, I mean, to me, as a drummer, to me, sound is kind of a basic, or the bottom of the pyramid you start with. You have to have that to have a result.
Oh, that's a good one. You know, for years, people say it's not a sound contest. Okay. I think I was mentioning to you last week, the famous words of Gord Tuck, a great friend of mine who was pipe major at St. Thomas Police. He says, if it was a sound contest, we'd just have to go out and play the scale. Go figure. It's humorous, but you know, and there's an aspect of truth to it. But in my opinion, there's not. I like what you just said. Sound becomes the pyramid of everything that's good in a performance. And without sound, you lack clarity of technique. It's as simple as that. And I can cite the best bands in the world. And I don't mind citing any one of those grade 1 bands in Scotland. Let's just take Inverary or Field Marshal Montgomery. How about St. Lawrence O'Toole? All these bands, boy, their chanters are so finely set. They're also in tune. And this is a big thing. Tuning, because their tuning is so precise, their technique is so precise. Granted, they are playing tightly together, but you can hear everything. You can also hear errors as well. That's the other thing. When you don't, and one of the biggest things in setting up pipes, and not enough bands pay attention to this, in the bagpipe, the Highland bagpipe, there are 11 notes. Only 2 of them are in the drones. And they spend so much time tuning drones to low A or whatever tuning meter they use. But there's 9 notes in that chanter. And if any one of those notes is out of the interval that's they're supposed to be in other words, out of tune, the drones don't harmonize with those notes. So the intervals of the chanter are so important. And when asked about good tone and poor tuning, it is in the intervals of the chanter. And the best bands can tune A, B, C, all the way up precisely the way it was meant. And there are tuning meters for it now. And we hear that. So we hear the drones in tune with low A. All of a sudden, they're out of tune with C or E. Well, there's a tuning issue with the chanter. So again, that hurts the clarity. And it is a dark mark on their performance. And so the warning to pipe majors is obviously you've got to start working more. Don't tune to A and without tuning B, C, D, and E all the way up. The drones have to harmonize. And so I still think clarity of tone and tuning precision become the fundamental building block of all good performances. And besides, if you're playing in a circle, you feel like playing when that sound is exactly what you want. Then from there on in, obviously, you're going to get unison, musical composition or musical performance from there on in. But if you don't have the sound, you're starting off on the wrong foot, I think, okay?
Is there anything as a piping adjudicator that maybe you see quite often that you think pipe majors might overlook or not prepare for outside of the obvious?
Oh, here's a good one. It's a non-playing one. How about how they address the line and how they come to the line? You can tell whether a band's confident or they're not confident by the stroll, and I mean stroll that they have up. Are they a bunch of sheep coming to the line? Is there precision? Are they paying attention to their pipe major? These are non-playing things, but you can sort of prepare yourself. How about pipers within the pipe section talking at the time the pipe major is attempting to give the command or not paying attention? I don't think they're addressed enough. And the best bands come to that starting line all attentive to what the pipe major is going to have to say and the final instructions. And it has to be consistent from the walk up. So that's a non-playing one. There's no question about it. From what I had before, I think bands, pipe majors could be more aware of tempo drops after the introductions. I don't think that's one that's accurately practiced or enough. Other than that, I think you'll find that everything else takes care of itself, Jim.
I think the tempo drop, I agree with you on that, is something you see in all the, I shouldn't say all, but a lot of the top bands you'll see it. And I think that comes from the pipe section practicing separately from the drum corps, where we each kind of have our own tempo and it comes together. And after the 2 rolls, we kind of revert back to where we were by ourselves. So I agree with you. I think it's something that has to be practiced as a band, and just practice the first 8 bars or something along with the introductory rolls, and I think you get into a habit that way.
Yeah, I learned a great deal from pipe major Bob Shepard. Unfortunately, passed away this past year. I watched Bob with Dysart years ago, and he did a series of pipe band attacks where the front rank would play and come in on that introductory E and in tempo for once through the first part, and they would do it over and over again with the drum section until it was absolutely perfect. Then that rank would go to the back, and the second rank would come up and do likewise, and they go right through the whole pipe section. And he was, I won't say merciless, he was relentless in getting exactly what he wanted. And that's one way of doing it, but I tend to agree with you. I had a little quote that it's a generality quote for all bands, and it had to do with your previous question on sound. And I say sound delivers so many good attributes to a good performance. Think about that one. Everything develops from a good sound, because the pipers can hear, the judges can hear, and clarity come out. Everything else is the musical instruction of the pipe major and the lead drummer, okay?
Yeah, I would think it would also be a case of first impression. If you're a band come up and the pipe sound is really good, you have that good first impression. If it's really bad, you have a bad first impression.
Oh, yeah. And I'm telling you, it takes a lot to wipe a bad taste out of your mouth, doesn't it? You know?
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Maybe we can move on now. Take off your piping hat now and put on your ensemble hat. And maybe we can do a kind of a similar type thing we just did with piping, but now we'll go through if you're judging ensemble.
Great. Okay, shoot away.
So basically, we could start off again with the grade 5 quick march medley. Here in the Midwest, we have to have all simple time tunes. We can't have compound time tunes in our quick march medleys anymore. So maybe what you're looking at now, if you're judging ensemble and that grade 5 band comes to the line, and they come to the line very confidently and get the nod from the ensemble judge to go, and where do you go as an ensemble judge from there?
Right off, yeah, and interject with some drumming aspects as well, because you're a full-fledged ensemble judge as well. And the piping perspective and the drumming perspective could be slightly different in semantics, but in the end, they come out the same, as you and I have judged so many times together, and our opinions are fundamentally the same, even though we might express them differently. So the commands given. And you know, this, as far as the introduction is concerned, this applies to all grades. The commands given, the tempo is set. The lead drummer is in visual contact and audio contact with the pipe major. The rolls are in accordance to the tempo set by the command. Now, that's when things start to bubble over, because we're playing tenors and a bass drum now, and I want to make sure that I'm hearing the bass in time. I want to hear the bass and tenors in time, if they're so playing in the introduction. And that often is not the case. And at this point, tonal aspects start to take over. In that early section of the first rolls, tenors and bass, the pitches of them can be quickly picked up, and you can hear harmony within those sections or not harmony, and that will also carry over once the pipe section comes in. For example, a bass which is far too sharp, or tenors that are pinging, and you get the idea, or tenors that are slightly out of time. So in the lower grades, these are things that have to be worked on. Don't take the tenor section and the bass for granted. In other words, give them lots of time to practice the precision that's necessary coming up. So from the introduction point of view, this is what I'm hearing. And then obviously the next thing is the precision at which the pipe section hits the first note with the drum section. And then obviously their tempos through the first part. Are the two sections in harmony together tempo-wise? And then some phrasing takes over. Are the phrases being finished in the time? You hear it quite a bit in the ending phrase of a lot of parts. One of the sections finishes later or earlier than the other. And that's a hard one to discern. Being a piping professional, I would be quick to see what the pipe section was doing and what the drum section was doing behind them. For example, if the drum section is pushing the tempos, they might finish the last phrase of the first part early, and that continues all the way through. So I'd give it a further listen, shall we say? Okay. So there's precision. There's playing in time. There's the tonal aspects of it, the volume balance of the drum section and the pipe section, and I stand up in a position that I'm in front of the band, keeping in mind that the full percussion section is in accompaniment to the pipe section. So I have to hear them coming through a section which is weak, and I don't hear those rolls clearly. I've got an ensemble issue right there at the beginning, and I would explore that through the rest of the performance. What about yourself, Jim?
Yeah, you brought up an important point, I think, right at the end there, where you position yourself as an ensemble judge. And I think you see that moved all over the place. Some judges will stand to the side, some like yourself will stand in the front. And I agree with you. I think standing in the front is where you get the full projection of the volume of the sound of the band coming at you. Or on the side, you're listening, I think, to more of a specific section of the band.
Yes.
And I think another important aspect, you brought up the bass and tenors, and in particular the bass. The bass drum, the way it's made, projects a sound at certain geographical points and does not project that sound to other points. So if you're in a bass drummer and you see that the ensemble judge might be to the side of the band, you might not want to turn like that crab walk thing they all do, where you're facing the side of the bass drum towards the front of the band. If the ensemble judge is to the side of the band, you might want to have a little more of an angle where you're pointing that drum at the ensemble judge. So I think the bass drummers need to be aware of where that ensemble judge is standing at the start and point their drum accordingly. It's the old thing where, is it the judge's job to find the optimum sound, or is it the band's job to point the optimum sound at the judge? And I think that's something that maybe there is no right answer, but it is a conundrum, not to use a pun there, but a conundrum of bands. They need to find that ensemble judge and play to him or her.
Well, I tell you, you just answered it for me, and I've had lots of thoughts on this. I think it's the responsibility of the performer to play to the adjudicator. And this leads us into what you're doing at the Chicago Games with the arrangement in concert format. And I maintain that it's in their case, the panel is stationary, and it's the responsibility of the band to, like in a concert hall, to perform to the audience. And I think, so your points are well taken. Bass drum, because of has a sweet spot and it has a no sound spot, as you go around. The bass drummer has that responsibility coming in. And I think, but it's still the responsibility of the band. They're the ones that are performing. And it reminds me of Haas Calhoun many years ago when we played in the 78. I was positive. I played on the corner. And Haas, I'm positive, rotated ever so slightly and not noticeable to the crowd because he was playing. But he rotated in such a way that he was always projecting the sound of the bass to the adjudicator. The sound has a decay as well. It has a tonal texture to it. And so the bass is so dominant on introductions, and it can be dead, damped right down, or it can have a decay that lasts through it. And I think musically, the people in the pipe bands have to decide what they want according to adjudicator's wishes in that case. So the bass is so important for ensemble at the beginning and throughout, by the way, but more so in the first few bars, eh?
Agreed completely. So if we're going along now in the quick march medley again, and the bands are playing, you're obviously looking for all the basics. What else would you look for in the main body of the quick march medley?
Well, consistency of rhythmic performance from the drum section that enhance the tunes. And I'm very critical on tenor and bass that are, I won't use the word lackadaisical. I might use the word haven't had enough coaching to understand the music. And so they might be off in timing, definitely off in rhythms in some case. Classic example where they use triplets and they just don't fit the music. Scores that are not commensurate to the tunes that they're playing. I got another problem with multi-tone tenor. Sounds like I'm picking on the poor tenor drummers. I'm not. I'm trying to encourage them, you know. But these are facts that we hear. How about, I'm going to ask you your question, multi-tune drums. If they're not in harmony and the bass is playing, so let's just suppose the bass is pitched somewhere around the 480 mark with the low A of the chanter, okay? If those tenors aren't in concert with the bass and they're hitting the drum at the same time as the bass, isn't there a tonal discord?
No doubt about it.
Makes sense. Yeah, and they say, oh, people say, oh, how can you pick that up? Well, that's why we've passed our exams on the adjudicating panel, and these are the things that we listen for. Okay, I listen to quite often in judging ensemble. I'll go around in the main body. I'm going to go around. If I can't hear the tenor section up front, I'll have to get down to the side where I can hear them. Same with the bass. And then I've got an issue with that. I've got to hear them if I'm going to be stationary at the top. But I always make a stab at going back down, and I get behind the drum section as well. I want to hear that pipe section coming through the drum section. In other words, a volume balance. I also want to hear whether the drum section is bringing more out of the bottom snare or the top snare, and so on. And these are things, in other words, this is a texture balance within the drum. And it goes up, shall we say, as being critical with the grades. It's not so critical on grade 5 and 4, okay? But it becomes one of those things that you certainly look for. And so obviously in the main body of a tune, we're looking for rhythmic balance between the sections. Are the scores suitable to the music they're playing? Are they played with the same spirit? Is one section sort of pushing the other? Quite often I find drum sections are the ones that are steady Eddie through the whole thing, and I found pipe sections can't play to the tempos that the drum section's playing. Actually, the pipe section is at fault. So they've got to be rehearsed. There can't be any fighting or tussling that way. So for the quick march medley, those are the issues. And if they, again, you're looking for consistency of tempos from all sections going from the different time signatures. And I commend the Midwest Pipe Band Association for dropping the compound time signature tunes. That's a real challenge, and I don't think it adds much musically to the march medley. Yeah, so it'll allow the bands to perform better without having to worry about a 6/8 in there.
You know? I agree. One thing I would add to that is, as an ensemble judge just coming from a drumming background, would be even at the grade 5 level, we should have some dynamic range and dynamic effect going on, I think. And I think that adds enormously, especially at the lower levels, because so many bands don't do it. That if you can get a good dynamic range with a consistent dynamics going on in your quick march medley, it adds a lot to the ensemble sound.
So dynamic range, then you would perhaps define as certainly volume control through various passages, accenting strong musical aspects of the music that the pipe section's playing. Would that be a fair enough consideration? That would be.
I would put that in there along with phrase definition, especially in the 3/4, 4/4, 2/4 idiom. If you're playing right through phrases, it's again a very basic thing that's very easy to do.
Yes, piping judge would pick up on some of that, and they'd also pick up on the lack of definition between within two-bar phrasing, especially. And there's a push forward into the phrase where you want a little bit of space in your music. You know,
Exactly.
and so we would hear that. So we have the same concept as you're saying, but we might say it in different ways, and that's a good enough reason to have two ensemble judges out there, one with a piping preference and the other with a drumming preference, so that they could merge their thought process and from a different point of view. And I remember judging the Chicago contest with Hugh Cameron, both of us on Ensemble. What an education, because we basically said the same thing, but we said it from a different point of view. So that would appeal to one part of the band and also to the other part of the band, you know?
Agreed. Yeah. Why don't we take it into the MSR now? Obviously, a lot of that would carry over, but maybe there's some specifics in the MSR in regards to ensemble.
Oh yeah, the same on introductions, no question about it. But then in the MSR, big tunes, and you want spirit, you want drive, you want to be all sections to be on top of that music. And I find that tempos become an issue, phrasing becomes an issue, and in suspets in particular, pulsing becomes an issue. Is the drum section, for example, delivering a strong weak or a strong weak, medium weak, or whatever the tune dictates? It's not necessarily always that, but are those pulses being brought out in a consistent manner, or is it a flat 4/4 score? And introducing MSR at a lower grade, I don't know if the skill level of many drum sections has reached that point, or it would be something that the instructors could certainly work with them. But the musical interpretation of the suspect is absolutely critical. The reel, depending on the type of reel, whether it's dot cut or it's a free-flowing type of reel, there's got to be momentum in it. And I use the word momentum quite a bit in reels. In other words, keep the thing going, keep it lively. And at this particular point on the ensemble sheet, I have built-in, shall we say, tempo requirements on what the different tunes, types of tunes should be. And if a band came out playing a 2/4 march at 62 beats a minute, for example, I would say you're out of the range of the competitive 2/4 march. You've got to get that tempo up. It's draggy. You're losing my interest, or whatever comes to my mind at the time. We have limited time to write a score sheet, so I write it in as brief as possible, with making sure I don't insult along the way. You know what I mean? So you try to, yeah, we've all been there. So it becomes musical performance. The same aspects on tonal and volume are obviously. I'll tell you, one of the critical things I have are the bass drummer that goes wild volume-wise and no longer accompanying. He's actually, or she is actually taking over the performance. And when that happens, that loses me completely, because it dominates what I'm hearing. And
or maybe the other way, Ken, it doesn't lose you, but it focuses you on that, and it takes away from the band's performance. I think that's how I look at it.
Oh, you've got such a way with words, let me tell you. You're far more diplomatic than me. That's exactly what it does. And in a suspect, we got triplets in a suspect. Things like tenor drummers not playing them in the suspect idiom. I hear bump, bump, bump. That's not how we play it, so they're out of time. That's an ensemble issue, and it means that the tenor section has not been well enough coached, okay? How about a side section which we might just call flat, not flat in pitch, but flat in dynamics in a suspect. There's no time to be flat in dynamics, let me tell you, okay? Right. And so the responsibility of keeping these tunes going, I believe, is with, in an ensemble sense, is often within the drum section. They have that capability. A good lead drummer, and away you go. And the corps will go with them. I'm not in a position as a piping ensemble adjudicator to be able to discern some of the techniques unless it's extremely poor. Okay, you follow what I'm saying? If there's unison issues in the drum section, it's obviously going to destroy the rhythms of the tunes coming out from the back end. I will hear that. But as far as making a comment on the quality of their scores, that's far beyond me. That's why two ensemble judges, because ensemble for the piping judge is includes making comments on composition. But the composition is interpreted as how the medley is actually structured. How is it put together? In other words, are the tunes like coming from a difficult thing, going from a jig into a strathspey, really, really hard. And if it's performed well, it's given top marks. But in many cases, it's the composition has worked against them. Things like that, you know. Tunes which might involved in a single key that goes on for 6 or 7 or 8 parts, no tonal issues. That's a composition issue for an ensemble judge as well. In other words, generally speaking, how pleasing was the performance to you? We've got a carte blanche, an open score sheet when it comes to that. We've got all the technical things we talked about, but the two drummers working together, two sections working together, but we've also got this overall view of the performance, and that's sheer opinion. And it gets back to the whole thing. Does it grab you, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we can all cite medleys we've heard at the Worlds of many different bands that say, oh, that ending was terrific, or that slow air was so beautiful. Whatever it was, yeah. There's many highlights of that. And I think it's important in your medley to have a musical highlight so it's not all the same. Have a highlight in there somewhere and have a part where it takes a breath.
Yes, and there's so many examples you said, and I'll cite one, and you'll probably remember it. It was St. Lawrence O'Toole coming on with the Garb of Old Gaul. Let me tell you, they had harmonies in there, they had counterpointing in there, and they had a drum section that was really sympathetic to the highs and the lows. Stephen Creighton's core was so dynamic in that opening tune that it grabbed you so much ensemble-wise, and because of the great dynamics in the back end, the piping judge was also severely, in a positive way, affected. Okay, there's numerous cases like that. I can go back to Simon Fraser University, 2008. Reed Maxwell finishing off the back end of that medley with Mrs. McLeod of Rassy.
Yeah.
Oh, it's stuff that fables are made of because of the ensemble. Okay, and the overlapping of the drum section and the pipe section, they become one. Can't define becoming one, but you can't detect anything that isn't sympathetic both ways, and that's part of the opinion, eh? Yeah.
And a lot of time, those highlights are not difficult musically or technically. They're just done very, very well and very, very true to the music.
Would you agree with this statement that the beauty in music is its simplicity, and if it gets so complex that you can't understand it, then you've lost the audience.
Yep.
And I won't say that I'm a simple person, but I'm a simple person. Appeal to me in a simple way, you know? And I think this is an important thing. And sometimes I've seen pipe sections, especially, Jim, that try to get over clever. They get single harmonies, and they get a counter melody, overlap it, then they got another pitch overlapping and so on. They're layering, and even in, they layer rhythms, a two beat pulse over a 3 beat and so on, you know, and maybe in 3/4 reels and stuff like that. It gets too clever. You can't discern all these things.
Right. I agree. And I think a lot of times what's forgotten is that as an adjudicator, you only hear that one time. You're not going over it time and time and time again where you can really get a grasp and an understanding of what's going on. You hear it one time, and it's got to appeal to you musically and pleasantly as an adjudicator with a one-time listen.
That's right. That's all you get. And just give you an idea for the quick march medley, I'll go back to the RSPBA when we were judging the MAP program tunes, 2 marches through, and we had to do a score sheet, turn it into the steward, and get ready for the band. And the total time between bands was 5 minutes.
Right.
So here the band plays for 2.5 minutes, and we've got to do all our quick thinking, shall we say. So not that as an adjudicator you're looking for sympathy. What you're doing is looking for understanding of, and we do make mistakes, and we try to correct them. But your time frame is so important, and the best contests can space their performances out so we have a chance to give the bands an accurate assessment, and that's what they're looking for. And it's getting better all the time, no question about it, especially in your association.
Oh, thanks, Ken. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Maybe just a couple of things just in the essence of time here. One issue that you see a lot is how do you adjudicate it? Particularly, I think in the maybe grades 3 and 4 a little bit. You'll see a band come out with 7 or 8 pipers and 3 snare drummers. And in the same grade, you'll see a band come out with 18 pipers and 8 snare drummers. Ensemble-wise, how do you balance that?
Oh boy. There has to be a volume balance and a dynamic balance between the sections, regardless of the numbers. It's almost an unfair advantage. I think most people would agree, and you said the lower grades, but let's go to the higher grades just briefly, where they've gone up, pipe sections up to 20, 21, 22, drum sections up to 10, 11, and so on. There is, what we're seeing is about a 2-to-1 ratio. And the sound that is emanates from these bands is something out of this world when you're up close. I mean, you're in another hemisphere sound-wise because of the sheer power and volume. But they've also guarded the volume balance and the texture of their music, even though they've gone big. Now, take the lower grades that you're talking about. We've got an obvious imbalance if the drum section isn't skilled enough to control what's going on. So you've got so many factors that come in here. A large pipe section and a small drum section, we hardly hear the drum section through the pipe section. We just don't hear them. And so in that sense, we've got an imbalance. And on an ensemble sheet, I'll make that quite clear. We've got a volume problem with the drum section. On the other hand, if we've got a small pipe section and a large drum section that's not controlling volume, we got the drum section basically controlling the whole performance volume-wise. So it becomes this volume balance that you're looking for. And I'm not sure what the answer is, except a lead drummer that coaches the drum corps on volume balance between the pipe section and themselves. But a small drum section with a big pipe section is almost an untenable situation. If you can follow my reasoning here, the lead drummer would have to go out of his comfort zone to make sure the volume was so high, so all of a sudden the rudimentary presence of their rhythms for the pipe section would be distorted to some degree. They'd be crushing things, pushing things. It's a real issue. And so there's got to be a numbers balance as well. When you get that imbalance, you've got issues. I think the bigger drum section has a better chance of controlling a good ensemble performance than a small drum section. In other words, I can't define the numbers, but 3 sides and 15 pipes is not good enough. 5 sides and 15 pipes might be just perfect, you know, and it depends on what they're producing. Same in tenor sections, though. The tenor sections, this is another thing in ensemble. I presented a presentation to the RSPBA judging panel many years ago on the position of the tenor section within the circle. Some facing the drum section, some facing the pipe section, where the bass was located in the circle. And this also affects the ensemble. And I was very critical at the time of bands like SFU that were facing the drum section, yet Field Marshal Montgomery was facing the pipe section. I was getting more tenor response from them by being stationary. I didn't have to search for it. I remember Shots was the same way. They faced Jim Kilpatrick, their tenor section. And I had to search for their tenor sound, meaning they drew me out of my comfort zone. My comfort zone was at the top of the circle, listening to the whole performance, but the tenor section drew me down. I made a comment about that, not projecting well through the pipe section. Okay, it's a balance thing. Yeah, so there's an imbalance, and it's very prevalent in the lower grade bands that are struggling to get a drum section going. Okay, really hard, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the problems of that, with either a big band and a small band, or a small pipe corps and a big drum corps, or vice versa. You've really got to listen to the balance of the sound. I think you hit it on the head.
Yeah, it's hard. Yep.
Yeah.
And they have one that's not as out of sorts has my sympathy. I'd like to put something on that. Here's something that you need to really work on. You know, more numbers, or more, you know, better dynamics, or what have you, less volume. You know, some type of positive response. You know.
I think something that helps with that, as well as helps in general with bands, is when you're recorded. preferably audio recorded or video recorded, whatever. But you sit back and listen to that performance and critique it yourself. I think 9 times out of 10, you'll come up with something that you maybe didn't hear when you were playing, and something will come out at you, and you'll hear it as an adjudicator hears it, as opposed to how you hear it within the circle. I think it's very important in your off-season preparation to do that.
You're pressing the right buttons right now, you know. As an adjudicator, I go back and listen to the recordings of the contests, especially the ones in Scotland, and I listen to them 2 or 3 times and judge them over again. And it's my form of adjudicating professional development. And I would encourage all judges to do exactly that. This idea of getting your fee for judging a contest and love them and leave them, take off and type of thing, and going home saying I'm a judge just doesn't wash with me. I believe to stay on a panel, especially as your experience goes on, you owe it to yourself to learn from your other adjudicators. So we discuss it there, but also to listen to your performances. And I would be the first person to say there were things that I missed that I picked up on the replay. There are also things that confirmed what I heard. And I remember one grade 1 event at the Scottish Championships years ago. I had one band first and one band second. And the only difference was their slow air of the second place band, they lost the blowing a little bit. And the performances were fabulous. But I was really upset that I might have made a mistake. I came home and listened to the performance on the recordings, and no, I hadn't. So it confirmed what I was doing, you know. So judging professional development is an important thing, not just a single one-off seminar once a year, but ongoing during the year. So just one of my things that I do.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think maybe in summary, what we could say, what I would say to a lot of the bands is that be comfortably musically in your playing, both in your technical level and your musical level, is to be comfortable going out there. Don't be afraid of something as you're going out there. Oh, I maybe hit this rudiment half the time. You want to hit it 100% of the time. If you only hit it half the time, change it. And piping maybe the same way. You want to have that consistency in sound, so that one day that you compete, that sound is great, and all the other times it's terrible. You want to get that consistency and that comfort level built up in your band.
A quote from Willie McCollum. We did the Invermark School of Piping this summer online, and he says, you drill things so that you get precision. 99% is not a passing grade. I loved it. And you keep on going, and you keep it simple. I use that principle when I'm teaching my younger people going into grade 5 and grade 4 competitions. I give them the simplest of 2/4 marches so that they can master the fundamental skills and then proceed from there. And a lot of them have had winning records as a result, okay? And they'll become good players. And the bands are the same thing. Don't strive to play stuff that you're technically, even one person in the band is technically not able of performing, you know, and so keep it within reason. And I think that's a lesson to all instructors of bands, plus the pipe majors and lead drummers, you know. Yeah, they have skill levels, and that's why we have grades. Your skill level will improve if you master one grade and going forward. It won't be, if you can't be working at grade 3 stuff when you're trying to compete in grade 5, it's not going to work, you know. I
agree. Anything else you want to wrap up with here, Ken?
Well, no, I think I want to thank you, the association, and I'm telling you, with good wishes for a 2021 season. I look forward to getting back into the circle in Chicago, and I hope it runs next year. At the present time, what I'm hearing from Scotland, in other words, there hasn't been much word, so there's a lot of apprehension. But so good luck in administering the next few months, Jim. I'm positive the association will come through strong. On top of that, you might have to consider as many online things as possible, and you'd have my total cooperation for that, guaranteed, okay?
Appreciate it, Ken. Thanks for a great interview, and all the best, and stay safe to you and Diane.
And to you and Barb, okay? Thanks, Jim.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Ken.